LinkedIn. Um, I am Kristy, pronouns she, they. I am on Ute, Arapaho, Cheyenne, and Oceti Shakopee land, which is now Colorado. I have been a strategic brand designer for over 13 years. I am also a mentor for creative entrepreneurs, and I'm a mediocre rollerblader and skier. I think sometimes it's nice to have a humbling hobby, and so those are mine. We already did intro, so we'll just keep it going. Okay, so just some housekeeping that I always like to have for any workshop I am hosting, co-hosting, anything like that. This space has a zero tolerance policy for racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, ableist, fatphobic, xenophobic, or otherwise bigoted language. Berlyn already mentioned this, but please don't share any information that makes you uncomfortable for others to know. We are recording this workshop. If you agree to these rules of the road as they were, please put a yes in the chat, or you can use the thumbs up function in Zoom. Love this. Okay, so what you are about to learn here, we're going to talk about brand foundations and why unaligned branding slows growth and wastes money. We're also going to talk about how brand strategy streamlines your business. We're going to talk about how values-led branding changes your business and the world for the better. So what is a brand? I think it's helpful for us to all use the same language. So your brand is really at its simplest, your reputation. It's the way you serve your customers, how they experience your business in all interactions and at every touch point, and how they feel after engaging with you directly or indirectly. You have a reputation, whether or not you take action to positively influence or not. So this inherently means you already have a brand. Now, what goes wrong when it comes to piecemealing our branding as we go? We have this reputation. Branding is really this idea of trying to positively and accurately reflect the work that we're doing to our dream clients. But if we're going to piecemeal our branding, what happens? Well, initially, not much is going to go wrong. This is where most of us start, and it makes sense when you're still figuring things out. So until you have a good sense of your offers and some long-term business aspirations, even if you don't know what that looks like, it's an okay move. So don't feel any guilt if you are in this place right now, piecemealing your branding. But over time, things are going to stop adding up. And often this happens quite literally because you will likely hit an income plateau. So things that once worked will stop working. You will make significant improvements in your business. Your audience will shift. And before you know it, things will feel both parts overwhelming and stagnant at the same time. This is something I hear a lot from my clients. And if you're in that place right now, you are not alone. This is very common. So here's specifically how it falls apart over time. You start your business with an idea. You planted this seed. You're like, okay, I'm going to begin business. You've nurtured the seed. You've invested time learning new skills. You've done a lot of trial and error. You've gotten better at marketing and sales and all of these pieces. And then this seed that you planted turns into a budding tree of a business. And it starts to look a little bit droopy in some areas. And you realize that it's time to get some sage advice from trusted experts who have healthy and thriving trees, if you will. I love analogies. So there's going to be some of those here. So you might start joining business memberships, group programs, working with coaches, maybe outsourcing a couple of things, and you're trying to address the droopiness of the tree. And your tree has grown these really strong roots, but now you're not sure what to do next. Each branch looks like it could use a little bit of TLC, but you don't know where to start. So maybe one branch, like the leaves are looking crispy. One, it's looking kind of like it's been overwatered. You're not sure if it has bugs or what's going on. So you have all of these different pieces that maybe just aren't quite operating as you want. And so you aren't sure where to focus your resources for the biggest return on investment. Do you get new brand photos and address that branch? Do you work on your website, your social media support, coaching, copywriting, marketing? You aren't quite sure what the next step should be. And so this is why branding is so important, because branding is where you need to start. So if you think of a tree, we have the roots of the tree, which is your business plan, your offers, your mindset as the CEO and owner. We have that root system there. This is baseline what you need to have. You're selling something to some people and you have a good mindset around it. The trunk is your branding. This is the strategy, which then dictates your vision, values, voice, and visuals. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. And then each of the branches and leaves are the manifestation of the brand. This is your website, your copywriting, marketing, photography, videography, philanthropy. Everything stems from that core system. And so if you don't know what your brand is and you're trying to sort of solve each of these individual branches on their own, you're going to end up investing a lot more time and money than you need to versus just focusing on that trunk and then that rippling out and sort of positively affecting all of these different areas. So what is brand strategy? We hear this word tossed around a lot. So if your business's reputation is your brand and branding is your effort to shape that perception, your brand strategy is the plan that brings it to life. It does this by detailing your brand's unique vision, values, voice, and visuals, and how they help you stand out from the competition and connect with your audience. You really want to be top of mind in your audience's brain when they're like, oh, I really need someone who does architectural drafting. Perfect. I know the person who does this. Or I need someone who is a business coach for out of the box coaches. Perfect. We really want to occupy that spot in their brain. And so brand strategy actually really enables you to take bold action in your business. So brand strategy is really just a series of deliberate decisions made to help shape your business's perception through clear communication of your values, goals, unique selling points, and most importantly, why any of that should matter to your dream clients. They really need to understand sort of the entire landscape of what it is that you offer and where they fit into that picture. And branding and the associated strategy gives you that lens through which all other business decisions are made. Brand strategy is sort of the foundation on which everything else is built. And this influences things like refining your offers, nailing down a messaging strategy, bringing the brand to life through marketing. All of this comes from strategy. And even if you just think about values as like this one piece of it, if you are given an opportunity to do a workshop with someone, you get to look at it through the values that you have. Is this a good opportunity? Do I want to work with this business? Do their values align with my own? Is the way that I'm showing up and marketing my business, is that in alignment with my values and how I like to operate? And that's just one piece. Values is just one component of strategy. So when you really build it out, it makes decision-making so much more clear, and it really makes the path forward clear. The example I like to give is like if you've cleaned your living space, it's so much easier to notice when something is out of place because you're like, oh, everything is clean now. And I can tell, ooh, those AirPods actually don't go there. They go in this drawer over here, right? Like we can find the parts that don't align anymore once we have the clarity that brand gives us. And brand strategy is keep going. I already said those things. We're good. Go for it. Okay, so what are values? Values are really what you stand for, and they're the lens through which all other decisions are made. And so why do values matter? Well, I already sort of alluded to this, but they streamline decision-making and help us take action that has a positive and lasting impact on our communities and the causes we care about most. I think a lot of us start businesses because we found something in corporate or the nonprofit world or another sort of avenue of earning income. Something about it didn't sit right with us. And I find that a lot of entrepreneurs have this deep belief that is driving their behaviors and actions in their business. And a lot of times it's about acting in accordance to their values and morals in a way that feels really good to them and supports those around them as well. So acting in accordance with our values brings us joy as humans because we have this innate desire to be in integrity with our beliefs and our values. I hope no one else has had this experience, though I'm sure you have. You can let me know in the comments. Have you ever had a job where it was out of integrity with your values? It feels awful. It makes it so hard to show up and do the work. Everything feels like it is at odds with your being. Yes, truly the worst feeling. And so in our businesses, we really have this opportunity to lean into our values and bring that joy and groundedness back to ourselves. And they help us make more money. People will pay more for values aligned brands. And I don't want to say, it's like, oh, is money everything? Money can literally buy happiness. Money makes it easier to buy opportunities, to get into rooms with other people, to hire support. They did a study. There used to be a study from the early aughts, I think, that was like, if you earn over $75K a year, then there's diminishing returns on your happiness. They redid that study in 2022, and that new number is $500,000 a year. So if you are making under $500,000 a year, making more money will make you happier. Yeah, it makes sense. When I used to hear the 75K number, I was like, really? It was outdated. So yes, it can improve our quality of life and make our businesses better as well. So let me give an example of like, what does this look like in practice? And I'm going to use the example of a candle maker because it's like the most generic thing, but this applies to every business, service provider, coach, product base. I have worked with name a kind of business, and I've probably worked with it, billion-dollar corporations, solopreneurs, nonprofit startups. So this is universal. So if we think about this candle maker, let's pretend we are at a farmer's market and they have a booth, and next to their booth is another candle maker. Ooh, tough break. It happens sometimes. I've seen it at farmers markets. And so someone might think, okay, how am I going to stand out at this farmer's market? And they might say things like, oh, I'm small batch, I'm handcrafted. And that's great, but that's really not any different than the person next to you, right? That differentiates you from Yankee Candle Company, but that's not your direct competitor, right? If they are at a farmer's market right now, your direct competition is just that booth next to you. And maybe an adjacent competitor is like that sourdough loaf of bread that they might want to spend money on instead. But like, we're really just trying to think about what is this direct relationship? And so small batch and handcrafted isn't actually enough to make you stand out. Now, let's say you come up to these booths and you have both of these candles and they both smell like lavender. You love it. It's great. And you're looking at the two of them and you can't figure out what makes them any different when they smell the same. And so if they don't have any sort of indicator about what your values are, what your niche is, your customers will be forced to judge you based on the only metric they have readily available, which is your price. And you do not want to be competing on price. No one wants to be the Walmart of their industry. We really need to figure out how can we position ourselves in a way to stand out beyond just price. So let's look at this example. Again, we are at the farmer's market. We got the two candles. They both smell like lavender. It's lovely, except one of them is this brand we're looking at here. It is in this recycled and recyclable packaging. It has this seeded paper topper on it, which is that image in the upper right-hand corner. This is a Colorado-based company, so let's pretend we're at a Colorado farmer's market. That seed paper is Colorado wildflower seeds. And so when I buy this, I get to take the glass container. It has instructions for how I clean it out. I put some dirt in it. I can plant this. Now there's even less waste, and I have a plant that is cleaning the air in my office. It's also vegan. It's also woman-owned. It's also 10% of the proceeds are donated to animal shelters, and it's non-toxic. Now I'm looking at these two candles, and I'm thinking, ooh, I care about the environment. I care about sustainability. I'm going to buy that one. And we will usually buy the option that aligns with our values at a higher price because we want our purchases to go further. And then what happens is, let's say I have a dinner party, right? And I bought this candle at the farmer's market and my friends come over. They're like, oh my God, I love that candle. And I get to say, oh my gosh, isn't it great? It's locally made. It's sustainable. I tell them about the seeded paper topper. And what I'm really saying is, aren't I great for caring about those things? And I know that seems so ridiculous to say, but we all do this. We all do this. And it even shows up in like, oh, I love your shirt. And you're like, oh, it was $8 at Kohl's. That's showing your value is thriftiness. We do this no matter what. And so giving your customers the ability to talk about your values gets you spoken about in rooms that you are not in so much more often than if it was just the product or service or the result alone. So it really increases that impact and gets you in front of more eyes. And so once you have done the foundational work of developing your brand, then and only then is it really time to bring it to life through that exceptional marketing.
That was so good. I wish I didn't have to follow up after you, but here we go. So let's just dive into a common marketing misconception, and that is that a lot of people think your marketing strategy is how often you're going to post on social a week, how often you want to send a newsletter, post a blog, etc. But this is really just how you implement your marketing. Your strategy is about how you want to present your brand values to your target audience and to get them to take a certain action. So Kristy, you love an analogy, so I got this for you. I like to think of branding as you going out and buying clothes in your closet full of clothes, and marketing is you wearing those clothes out into the public. So our clothing like really represents us and how we want to express ourselves. It helps us learn more about other people, and we kind of gravitate towards people who wear certain things because we kind of have an idea of who they are. So your strategy is your brand wearing a certain outfit, presenting itself, helping your target audience identify you, learn quickly about you, and if they are a brand that if you are a brand that they want to align with. So for example, I am an introvert, right? So I cannot like just walk up to people and start a conversation. I'm getting much better about it, but I need some help. So for my marketing, we're all marketing ourselves every day, right? So for me, I am wearing something, I'm usually going to wear something interesting, like if it's my shoes or if I'm wearing like a pattern. And for me, that represents me and it attracts people that I want to be friends with or something. So they're going to come up to me and say, "Hey, I like your shoes or your pants." And so that's me marketing myself, me attracting my target audience and getting them to take an action and come talk to me. Uh, my mouse is frozen. Okay, so the most important thing is to wear your clothes confidently. So your branding is something that you should be so proud of that you want to scream it from the rooftops, and you want to use that to proudly present your content. So like Kristy was saying, you can't be that brand for everybody. It's important to kind of hone in on your brand values and really like fully commit to expressing those to attract your target audience. You will see results so much quicker if you speak directly to your target audience than trying to be your brand for everybody. Okay, so we've got our clothes picked out, aka we have fully identified our brand. We know what we want to be about. So what's next? We're going to move to brand messaging really quickly before we dive into the marketing strategy. Your brand messaging is generally just your overall story and image of your business. So that includes things like having your tone of voice, your brand personality identified, and like having your taglines and your sales pitches. So let's say you're posting on like 5 different social platforms, you're posting newsletters, blogs, etc. You want to make sure that you're not being a different person on all of these platforms. So having your brand messaging tuned in or whatever will help you maintain consistency, which helps you with brand recognition. So your audience is going to recognize you across all of these platforms, and that will help deepen your community with your audience. So then we move into the marketing strategy, and that's taking everything that we've learned about so far, packaging it up and sending it out into the world and encouraging your audience to take a certain action. So whether that's like brand building, building awareness, growing your following, growing your email list, getting people to take an action by signing up to your email list, following you online, getting them to visit you on your website, make a sale, of course. Those are all the things that you're going to do to get them to take a certain action. There's one truly exceptional brand that I want to use as an example, but before I move to them, I want to know what comes to your mind when you picture the brand Red Bull. Doodles and wings. Oh, wings. Okay. Well, yeah, going too hard. Okay, that's a good one. Bold, daring, also very good. Okay, yes, exactly. So, extreme sports. Yes. Oh, skiing. Very specific. But yes, exactly. So Red Bull's brand values are high energy, high adrenaline, lots of adventure, and pushing things to the limit. So that's their brand values, and their messaging is exactly like Red Bull gives you wings. That is their promise to you that their product will help take you to the next level. And their tone of voice is very casual, personable, funny, down to earth, like you're talking to a friend. And all of that was determined by having a strong understanding of their target audience and knowing how to speak to them while still being consistent with your brand, with their brand values. So you have your brand values, and you have your target audience, and your brand messaging is what helps kind of bridge that gap and speak to them. So if Red Bull's tone was like formal and corporate-y, there would be a disconnect. Like they're not going to talk to their target audience in that tone and like connect with them. So then we move on to their marketing strategy. And this is a huge brand, but we can still implement them, all the things that they do on a much smaller scale. I mean, their marketing's like literally out of this world. This is like an astronaut skydiving back to Earth. But even though they're doing these crazy things, there's still things that you can implement, and we're going to chat about a few of them. But at the heart of everything they do, you know it's going to be extreme, and you know it's going to push the limits. And that is what keeps their brand aligned with the super high adrenaline, high energy. And that's what keeps them top of mind when you are feeling like you need that same boost. If you compare this with like Monster, or I don't know, I don't really drink energy drinks, so like Celsius is another one. Like nothing really comes to mind when you picture them. You're not like immediately getting that same energy boost, like simply from thinking about Red Bull, because you get all of these visuals attached to Red Bull. So a few marketing tactics that they implement is 1, experiential marketing, 2, influencer marketing, content marketing, and social engagement. So what does that look like? Experiential marketing. Remember back in the day, I'm sure they still do this, but there was a time when the little Red Bull car was like literally everywhere. They were passing out cans like crazy. I would love to know like what their budget for that was, because it was insane. I'm sure that was like when they were launching or whatever. But like I grew up in the middle of nowhere in Kansas, and the Red Bull car was there. Like, what are you doing there? But they were everywhere, right? That's experiential marketing, is like literally being like having an event, having people experience your product. So they would be in like grocery stores and gas stations. They would be everywhere. Yeah, the Red Bull car was everywhere. I'm sure they partnered with radio stations a lot for like other radio station events and everything. That's smart too. But that was their thing, is that they were being on the ground, getting their product in the hands of people, getting them to taste the product, and the action from that was growing brand awareness at the time. And then of course, if you like it, you're at the store, you're going to pick it up. Another thing that they do is content marketing. And this is with their like high action sports events and like really crazy stunts and stuff. So what content marketing is essentially having one piece of long form content and then breaking that down and posting it into a billion different places. And the actions related to that, there's a lot of them. So 1, you're either growing your brand awareness, and 2, you're getting people to your website. So like for these events, people see these videos and then they're going to go to their website and see like what other events are they having. So you're just getting people to know your brand and go to your website. So with this content marketing and their events, they're posting them, or they're probably showing them live, then they're going to post them on YouTube, and then they're going to break those long form videos into a billion smaller videos for social, which on their scale often goes viral. So that's just really like getting this content whirlpool of like endless sharing and views, which is just growing their brand even more. With these like sport events, I'm not like a sport person, but I just love Red Bull. They do a great job. I don't know enough about their like high active things. So anyways, they also have a lot of influencer marketing. So they're getting like high profile athletes to do these events. And then if you don't know about Red Bull, but you know about their athlete, they're going to be watching these videos. And again, it just kind of adds to that whirlpool of content sharing. And another big thing that they do, which you can easily do with no budget, is their social engagement and community building. So on their channel, on like their Instagram, they're posting a lot of user-generated content. So just other active events or like crazy stunts that people are doing, they're sharing that on their channel. They're spending a lot of time engaging in the comments with people on their videos. And then they're also posting on other people's videos and like engaging with the community there. So all of that is just like building more brand awareness and getting them really active in their community, building and growing a community and keeping people engaged. And all of these touch points are just really helping them stay top of mind. So whether we realize it or not, when we are going to a grocery store, we are so influenced and we are so like essentially manipulated to buy certain things. Almost nothing that we buy at the grocery store is on like our own free will. We've seen it somewhere, a friend has mentioned it, and that's just what all of these touch points do, is just keep you top of mind for something. Okay, so I just named off quite a few things that Red Bull does, all of those things that you can do for your own brand, but how do you determine a strategy for your brand? Few questions to ask yourself. First one is, what feels most authentic to you? So going back to like Red Bull, what feels most authentic to them is doing like content marketing with these high active events. Their target audience is not going to be reading like long blogs and articles. They probably won't even be watching these like long form videos. What they really want is these short clips on social media. They're generally living a very active lifestyle, so just kind of tuning into what they want. Going back to the candle brand example, if what feels most authentic to them is like educating their audience on living a non-toxic lifestyle, maybe they would post more like long form articles, or maybe turn that into videos. So just kind of feeling what feels most authentic to your brand and turning that into valuable content for your audience. The second question is, how does your target audience like to receive content? Kind of just mentioned that with Red Bull, but when you create your marketing strategy, you're going to be doing a lot of research into your target audience, and a lot of that is including like how they like to consume content. And there are a lot of variables in that, like what's their age, et cetera, et cetera. But if you learn that your target audience likes to just read things on carousels, or maybe they do like to see short TikToks, or they like to see longer TikToks, but not like full long form YouTube videos. There's so many options. You'll learn some of this as you research, but generally you're going to always be testing things out to see, because you never truly know what's going to land until you just do it and see how people react. And the last thing is, what do you honestly have the capacity to handle? And that's either time or budget. If you don't have the capacity to be on every social platform and post blogs, post newsletters, like don't do that. Just focus on one area, be so good at that, fully invest your time in that, and don't spread yourself too thin. Yeah, not a lot of people talk about capacity, but I work with a lot of small businesses, and it's like, okay, we can't be a Red Bull budget, even though we want to be a Red Bull budget. We're not there quite yet. And just like being really honest with yourself about the time that you have, and because if you have a lot of time, you can do a lot of things, right? But we don't. Okay, so we've learned how to identify our brand, what we want our brand to be about, how we're going to present our brand to the public, and then how we're going to get our customer to take action. That was a lot of stuff that we definitely just did. I know it might feel a little overwhelming. So if you're here on this live call, I would love to offer you a free 30-minute strategy session. I will put the calendar link for that in the chat right now. I'm going to pass this back to Kristy, and then we will be open for questions. So you're welcome to either drop them in the chat or just like raise your virtual hand, and we will just go down the line.
Beautiful. And if you are needing support figuring out sort of those foundational pieces that I talked about, I am bringing back my Brand Clarity VIP days. This is something that I do somewhat seasonally, where you get to learn how to captivate dream clients and take confident action in your business while making your heart and pockets fuller in just one day. So really what happens is it is a 5-hour experience of which you have to be present for 3, and you will get instant clarity typed up in a beautiful PDF for you that helps you identify your brand basics of vision and values, and how to start implementing it right away. So I will share that there. But please, I am an open book. So any questions that you have about branding at all, I would love to address those as well.
Time.
Ooh, that comment in the chat about how so many clients think that they're doing something wrong if they can't be on a gajillion platforms. It's so real. I think so many times we see people who are doing everything, but the reality is that like they have a team supporting them or, you know, they have all of these systems in place. And I think there's this like notion that you have to do everything when really you should just focus on like, hey, where are my dream clients and how are they consuming content?
Definitely.
Charge strategy for service.
So do you mean like a specific example that we talked about, or what? Let's see, how would you change a strategy for a service? If we're sticking to the Red Bull example, I mean, all of those could still essentially be the same. So I'm a service, I do a lot of content marketing. So I do a lot of blogs, I do these workshops, and then I take what I learn or speak about in these workshops and I turn those into different social posts. Then I turn all of that into newsletters, and then I post the same thing on my LinkedIn. Like, I'm also not doing individual strategies for every platform. I'm taking a lot of what I'm doing on one thing and posting it on others, but that's a good way to do content marketing. And same thing for like community building. You can do a lot of social like interacting for a service-based business because you're kind of just growing your personal brand and just getting people to know you and be really familiar with you.
From the branding side of the strategy for product versus service, a lot of it is very similar. So product-based businesses are obviously going to have additional pieces where it's like, okay, where's positionality in stores? Are we doing wholesale? Is that pricing structure set up? How are we targeting the people who are the wholesalers who are buying our stuff? What does it look like if we are doing direct to consumer on our site? So there's a couple little extra logistic things that go in there. But service providers, you know, they don't have those parts, but it's a little bit easier to sort of knock out, okay, who are the ideal clients for each of your offers? And how do we make sure we're bringing in more of them? So that way you always have like a consistent pool of people to market to. And then for the speaking to the importance of brand for internal organizational culture and even hiring, yes. So brand influences every aspect. And so it becomes really, at first when you build a brand, especially if you're like a pre-launch brand, it feels aspirational at first. You know, it's like, these are the visions that we have. This is what it is looking like. And so you get people who have that same vision for the world and what you are trying to build. And over time, you attract more of those people into the company culture. And so it sort of becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy where people who are drawn to those values and that work come to you, and it sort of starts to weed out the people who are maybe not aligned with that vision. So it makes it a little bit easier to hire as well if you are really leaning into those values. And I think it's helpful to have, you know, some really specific values, not just like integrity. You know, it's okay to have a couple like that, but if anyone could use those values, either you need to add additional values or you need to modify the way you are describing them and what it means in your organizational structure. You know, no value is just one word. It's also the context and the definition and how you embody it. So keeping those things top of mind will help you stand out from the competition and also stand out to employees who are looking to be in an environment that sort of fosters that. Great question.
Great answer.
You are very welcome. Yeah, I do corporate branding as well. So I'm in all the houses. In regards to brand development for a new company, what typically comes first, the product and or service, or creating the brand first? So this varies. I would say in an ideal world with unlimited budget or VC funding or whatever that looks like, branding comes first. So you know what the offers are, you know what you are trying to sell. You might not have proof of concept, but this happens a lot for serial entrepreneurs where their proof of concept is that they can build a brand and build a business. So in those situations, you build brand first. I would say for most of my solopreneurs and businesses that are like 15 or fewer employees, it's doing a best effort on brand at first and sort of letting it grow organically. And then once you have reached either a certain income level where you feel like you are ready to expand, or the clients that you're attracting isn't quite right, then you can have someone come in and do a full rebrand for you. So it can kind of go either way. But I will say smaller businesses tend to, go at it themselves for a little bit before investing.
Yeah, I've worked with a lot of small businesses who come to me with a product and they're like, okay, now what? And it is just a lot of testing. So just kind of getting started if you don't have like a lot of money to invest, but you know that this is for sure your product, just like get started in any way that you can. And there's always going to be evolutions of your brand. It's always going to be changing and you're going to learn things as you go. So just choosing one, the chicken or the egg, to get started and then going with it and just seeing how it evolves over time. But definitely just get started.
I think there's also this notion that branding has to be something that is all or nothing. And I am staunchly against that, especially for my smaller businesses, because you can do foundational work, the things that I do in VIP days, that carries with you from the beginning. Knowing what your values are and what your vision and mission are will serve you for the duration. And there will be small refinements, but that's branding too. And that, I would argue, influences more business decisions than just like your colors and your logo, which I also do and are important, but not as important as some of these like more, ground level things.
Mm-hmm.
Keep the questions going.
Yeah.
I like what you said about the if there's a brand that you can have, like that one word brand thing, that if anyone can use it, I don't know how helpful that is. I'm curious your thoughts on I've seen brands that are just like a one word thing that people try to find, or it's like a sentence. Do you have like recommendations or ideas around some of that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can do whatever works for you. And I know sometimes that's like the not helpful answer. I think sometimes similar to a logo, where we put a lot of pressure on this logo to be the brand, which it is not. Sometimes we do the same thing with values, where we are trying to find this one single word that encapsulates what we are doing. And I think a lot of people find that restrictive. So one of the ways around that is come up with a working draft of like, okay, this is what this value is. It could even be a couple of words. And I find that most folks find it helpful to write like 1 or 2 sentences underneath it for what that looks like in practice. And so a great exercise is literally just think of one value in your business and run through what it looks like from someone to discovering you, however they do that, whatever marketing channels you are on, or referrals. What does that process look like? And how might they be experiencing your values at every single one of those? And sometimes that exercise will actually help you pull out sentences of what it looks like when you embody those values. That answer your question. Very good. Let's see here. Okay, thank you, Petra. Having said that, can you speak a little to the aesthetics and speaking to your dream clients? Kristy, you had a visual recently of a coffee shop versus a VIP lounge. Yeah. What generally are the elements to consider when deciding colors and visuals to match tone and voice? Yeah, so there's a lot of things to take into consideration, and everything with brand is like a bunch of levers. So think of just one quality. If it's like playfulness, that's an easier example. You can have playfulness in the colors, but maybe you're also high ticket. And a big misconception is also that high quality means it has to be serious, which is not true. So let's say you are high quality playfulness. You can turn up playfulness with color, but have a more refined composition of the logo. Or the logo can be really buttoned up, but your copy is very playful or has a lot of humor. So there's always this push and pull of elements. And so when developing sort of that strategy, we're trying to get that right balance while keeping in mind, okay, what are my dream clients doing, thinking about? How will they feel when they interact with this? So it's a lot about feeling and just sort of understanding where they are coming from. And then how that plays into marketing of like, how do we catch their eye as well? So there's a couple different things happening there. And then in terms of getting it to, let me see here. I feel like I answered it. If you have a follow-up question, let me know. Okay. Okay, for a more complex business model that serves a niche market, would you cap brand values at a specific number? I don't know that there's one answer that will suit everyone. I think 5 to 7 is what I usually tell people. If you do too many things, customers will start to think, how is it possible for them to actually implement all of these things? And especially if you are already in a niche market, you've already whittled down who is in your sphere, right? So already heavily niched in the values, you can just have a couple because we've already sort of pared down who we're talking to, if that makes sense.
Great questions. Great answers.
Yeah. So many great questions. This is like, these are like some of the best questions I've been answered or asked.
Very good.
I have 8. Yeah. Yeah, you maybe already knew it. And like, it's great. And oftentimes I think what happens with values is sometimes we'll write down everything that we value. And we often find that a lot of them can just be sort of lumped into similar categories, or if we're like, oh, we really want to pare them down, take the like definition of one and sort of like incorporate that other word into, a different value and see how they can kind of play well together.
Maria, did you have a question or were you just picking up some background noise? Background noise.
All good.
Oh, any other last questions?
Or even a takeaway. I think sometimes it's helpful to share something that we learned or something that we're excited to implement. Because otherwise, we go off to the next task and we forgot the things that we've learned or want to try out. Five to 7 number is super helpful to keep in mind. Yeah. Sometimes we just need to know like what sandbox we're playing in. If the world is our oyster, sometimes that's a little too much. Thinking of the niche market as a brand is helpful. Yeah. Yeah, there are a lot of everything brand related, and all the business decisions are really just about finding the right parameters to get your dream clients to you. And so sometimes that comes from our niche, sometimes that comes from the offers that we have or the way that we deliver the offers. Sometimes it comes from the values, like all of these different pieces. We're just whittling away at the mass populace to get the most aligned clients in our door. Where do solopreneurs typically start with marketing their company?
That's a great question. And it really like kind of varies, but that goes back to the question of what do you have the capacity for, time or budget, and then where your target audience lives. Generally, if you sell a product, you're going to be on like Instagram or maybe TikTok, depending on your target audience. If you are like selling a service, maybe LinkedIn is best for you. But always have your website built out no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're starting with. You always want to have a place to drive traffic back to and not just your social profile. So starting there, I think starting with your brand values and fully knowing what your brand is going to be about is a great place to start because that will give you a lot of direction. So going back to like the candles and Red Bull, that will give you a direction if you want to post blogs about non-toxic living, or that will give you a direction if your target audience and your values align with like content marketing and things like that. So just knowing what your website, or not your website, knowing what your brand is going to be about, setting up your website, and then just choosing something that kind of aligns with your brand and your target audience. branding clothing metaphor. Yeah, I was thinking about this a lot and I was like, wow, that's like, this is like a personal development thing, like, right? We're all doing marketing for ourselves every day. And I think that metaphor like really took away the scariness of like branding and marketing strategy because it's not as intense as like what it may seem or not as overwhelming. It's literally just knowing who you are, what you want to wear, and then just going out and wearing it.
It's such a good example.
Because even I get overwhelmed. I'm like, oh my God, what's my strategy? What is this brand? What's happening? But it's really not that deep.
Yeah, and every touch point gets to be just like a breadcrumb. I love to comment in the chat about that. We're really just trying to sort of like seed the values and the way that we are operating into everything that we do. It doesn't always have to be something as overt as being like, this is what I value, this is what's going on. Sometimes it's just these subtle nods that help people know they're in the right space. I wear colorful makeup, I have colorful nails. That's already an indicator if somebody's like, whoa, that playfulness is not going to be professional enough for me. That just makes it easier for all of us. I like to use the analogy of a cilantro. Some people love cilantro. Some people hate it and it tastes like soap. And in any case, that doesn't make the cilantro bad. We just need to make it known to people so they can either opt in or opt out accordingly.
That's a good one. I'm opting out of cilantro, but yeah. Yeah. Channel your inner cilantro.
Yes, exactly. I love cilantro. So look, even between the two of us.
Cool. And kind of like going back to the note about breadcrumbing, what I've learned lately is that like I've been doing a lot of networking and I've learned that it's not necessarily it is about who you have built connections with, but it's also like who you've spoken to last, right? So like I've met probably tons of branding people over the last few months, but I found like people that I'm aligned with and I see your content all the time. So when I think of branding, I'm like, oh, Kristy, yeah, that's who I want to connect with. And so it's not like having these breadcrumbs and having these constant touch points. Even if your brand is like a preferred brand, you still need to kind of stay top of mind for them. So having all these little breadcrumbs everywhere is a good way to do that.
Yeah, I think, and the other thing with marketing, and you tell me if I'm getting in the wrong lane, but I think it's just you have to be really redundant, like to a point where like you are almost bored as the entrepreneur. I know I used to host workshops and I would talk about it once and I would get one sign up and be like, oh my gosh, it's awful.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I talk about it every day for several weeks. Like that's the difference. It's just people need that repetition, I think.
Yeah, we are so like bombarded with content that we don't even remember. If you were to go to somebody's feed and look at all of their posts in order, you're gonna see that they're just saying the same thing over and over and over again. But when it's on your feed, it's not, it's blended in with everything. You probably forget that they've talked about it already. So like even if you only have a couple brand values that you want to like speak on, just say the same thing essentially over and over again and yeah, exactly. The rule of seven, which I think now we have like shorter attention spans. So I think now we need like 20 touch points before we buy something. But it used to be like general rule of somebody needs to see your brand 7 times before they commit to buying. Um, I I hope it's still 7. That'd be nice, but I don't think it is. They should update that study too. That'd be really
They
interesting.
should. I can't remember how they figured out what that rule was. I want to say it was something with like movie theaters or popcorn. Like it's something very dated. So I'm
Yeah,
like, it's not from the digital age, if you will.
I was gonna say probably like a postcard, a commercial.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Oh, 1930s from movie studios. So there you go.
1930s.
So maybe a little outdated.
Yeah, that would be very interesting to see now. Oh my gosh, I'm kind of nervous to know what that number is actually.
In a way, though, I think for any entrepreneurs in the room, that is freeing because it means you don't have to put as much pressure on each individual piece of content.
Oh, I love that shift. Yeah, that's good.
and people need to be reminded. You know, I can't tell you how many times I'm like, been on a walk with my dog and I like pull out my phone. I'm like, oh, that sounds like a cool workshop, but like, I gotta pay attention to what's going on here. I'll sign up later. Forgot.
Yeah,
And we all are often doing multiple things at one time. So we need the reminder.
totally. Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. Any other last questions before we wrap up? This has really been so fun. You guys have asked great questions and have been super engaged. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Always love good questions.
Thank you for your time. I'm so glad to see you all here. This is recorded, so I will be sending out the recording. You'll get a link to YouTube, and yeah, thank you again. Thanks for being here. It's good to see you guys.
It was so wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Berlyn.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun. Have a good day, everybody. Bye.
Bye.